it's an honor to introduce Reverend Michael J. Garanzini. He began his tenure as president of the Association of Jesuit Colleges and Universities in July of 2020, and he was elected to the board of directors and then chaired, was elected by the AJCU board of directors and then chaired by Reverend Brian F. Linen, former president of Loyola University, Maryland. Immediately prior to his role at the AJCU, Father Garanzini was the Secretary General for Higher Education of the Society of Jesus. And just so people have some sense of what that means, like it's taken me as a novice to the way the Jesuits are organized. It's kind of hidden to some extent, but the International Association of Jesuit Colleges and Universities includes over 200 universities and institutions of higher learning worldwide. So coming from this experience of serving as president of the IAJU, the International Association of Jesuit Colleges and Universities, he then has assuming their leadership for Jesuit colleges and universities, 20 Jesuit colleges and universities across North America. Prior to that, he was the president of Loyola Chicago for about 16 years. And during his stay there, he accomplished many things, but one that has stood out to those of us across Catholic higher education is starting one of the first junior colleges, community colleges, and making a first-rate Jesuit education affordable for people of all backgrounds. And this was an incredible accomplishment, and with social justice implications that continue to provide benefits. I could go on, and he probably wants me not to, so I will kind of wrap it up. But I want to say one thing, and I think it's worthwhile to note that we are holding this event in the Locatelli Center for Student Education. Father Locatelli, I never had the honor of meeting him, but he was not only had an incredible influence in Santa Clara's pluralistic approach and commitment to justice and service to others, but he also, my understanding, has had a great influence across Jesuit higher education. And I think it is not a coincidence. In fact, I know it's not a coincidence that in the same room today, we're with Father Garanzini, who has not just continued, but expanded upon this legacy through his leadership and encouraging the best of us, and his ability to go between this sort of the big, bold visions and the creative process, which can be messy, but he also knows how to put together teams and leverage institutions to implement these plans, right? To turn a bold reality into practice. So I can't think of a better person as we move into the second day of this conference to help us think about how these ideas can be deepened and scaled as we work with our Jesuit partners. So please join me in welcoming Father Garanzini.
Thank you, Chris. I'm glad you started, or you ended there with a comment about Father Locatelli. Those of you that knew him, you knew that you were with a really remarkable person. He had so many visions about where Jesuit higher education ought to go, and he pushed people like me and others into leadership positions. That was one of the things that Father Locatelli did, and one of the things that I really admired about him and have tried to copy, which was listen, keep your ear to the ground. What are the faculty saying? He was very interested in building a university around faculty talent, faculty interests. And in fact, when he started programs here, he always worried about how to keep them from getting too bureaucratic, making things too difficult for faculty, so that things could be more easily distributed and not have to go through so much bureaucracy. He understood how universities work, but he was always fighting how they work at the same time, which is a remarkable leader, and I am really privileged to be in his building, or the building named after him, and to be at Santa Clara. The first thing I want to do is to congratulate Santa Clara and your faculty, your team here, especially around environmental justice team, because you really are doing some remarkable things that are way ahead of what many other places are doing. I know that you've worked at this for a long time, and I know you're building this, but if you knew how far behind most other places are, you would be kind of amazed. So I really do admire the way you have taken on, especially the community-based leadership for environmental justice. That community-based research that you do with students and with neighborhood organizations is a real model. And what your students, the hundreds of students who go through here, who get an opportunity to experience that community-based work, where listening and understanding is the first objective and the first part of your education, you're really on to something here. And then we're collaborating with them to study what the environmental challenges are and what it's doing to people. It's just beautiful the way you've carried on this work and how you go back to those and can keep working with those organizations, so that as universities, as students, we're not just flying in and flying out, which is very difficult for community-based organizations to really handle. And it's not fair to the people that live in those communities. So you've got some things going on here, some methods where you are really doing, I think, a model. And I'm going to encourage you at the end of this to help us a little bit. I want to say a little bit about the International Association. Santa Clara, as a Jesuit university, is part of, and Chris mentioned it, the International Association of Jesuit Universities. The Society of Jesus is divided into 70 different provinces, but into 6 regions. North America is one region, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia Pacific, and then East Asia are the 6 regions. We're not evenly distributed, but we're fairly distributed throughout then the globe. So there may only be 6 young African Jesuit institutions, but there's 28 here in the United States and Canada. There's 32 in Latin America. There's about 40 institutes, and most of them are connected with universities, but not all. Some are freestanding universities in Europe. And then throughout Asia, we have another 18, 25 institutions that are embedded in their communities. They're part of the community. And because of that geographic diversity, we also include cultural and religious diversity and socioeconomic diversity. Some of our institutions are catering specifically to the poor. So you can go to India or some places in Latin America, and basically it's a very, we would say, cheap education, a very modest amount of money to attend these places because they're designed for the poor. So when you look at that association, the International Association, when you look at the members of that, what we have is the diversity that we need to do something truly interesting and truly impactful. So what are we doing as an international association of Jesuit universities? Well, the strategic plan calls for getting a group of universities together, 4, 5, 6, up to 8 key universities who will be then the backbone, who will be this for a larger project. One of those collaborations, which we are just forming now, is an international look at what we can do in the area of environmental justice. What could we do in terms of research? What could we do in terms of education and designing better education for undergraduates, especially in graduate students? And what can we do with faculty that would eventually lead to action research and then action advocacy? One of those, as I said, is going to be around the environmental justice issue. What is growing as we do our survey around the world, what is growing in interest, because of the issues in Africa, the issues in India, the issues in Latin America, North America, is the issue of food and water insecurity. That seems to be something that really kind of inspires, attracts our faculty, whether they're teaching in Argentina or they're teaching in Mumbai. So I think what you are doing here in that whole area of food and water insecurity actually can play a leadership role. And I would love to see the University of Santa Clara become one of the anchor institutions who will then attract the others. But we need 4, 5, 6 really solid institutions with a capacity for research to really take the lead. And I think you guys are really primed for that, for one of the leadership roles. So I know that your group here is very much in touch with some of the leaders in the United States and around the world. And I'm hoping that, you know, Santa Clara will step up for that. Let me talk a little bit about the Association of Jesuit Colleges for the United States. So you're obviously a member of that group as well. You know who we are. You know, they're not just Santa Clara, not just University of San Francisco, not just Loyola Marymount in LA, Fordham, Loyola in Chicago, Loyola New Orleans, where we are, again, geographically distributed, and many, like here, have a nice diversity in terms of religion and culture, and in terms of socioeconomics as well. So not just geographically, but the other 2 qualifications are met too. Again, we want to do something that would be, I think, our question is, how do we make environmental justice a signature element of a Jesuit education so that everybody coming through a Jesuit school actually has touch, whether they're in the business school or the social work school or an undergraduate arts and science major, engineering, and so on, that everybody that comes through a Jesuit school will have touched this issue and have tried to integrate that in their own world vision. A Jesuit education, we hope, prepares you by giving you the tools for leading a life of meaning and purpose. And this is certainly one of those issues you must deal with if you're going to become a citizen of your local community, United States, your region, if you're going to become a citizen of the world. So how could we make this a signature piece of what a Jesuit education is all about? We often talk about the faith that does justice. So how do you take your religious beliefs and use them as your ground for continuing your work in justice? And how would you take this work in justice to live a life of meaning and purpose? So that's our aim, and that should be our aim. So we've got several commissions that we formed, and we're gathering next summer, not this summer, but the next summer, we're gathering 400 or 500 of the leadership of our 28 colleges and universities in the United States. We're going to gather them in Chicago for a couple of days, and these commissions are going to report and try to convince presidents, the provosts, and so on. These issues should be at the heart of what we do as institutions with responsibility to this country and to this world. So one of those, another one, for example, is democratic citizenship. How are we preparing young people to participate in this democracy, to respect it, to be able to argue and discuss things civilly and so on? Well, this issue of environmental justice has got to also be another one of those features that we want to drive through the curriculum of each school within each university or college. So that's where we're going. And we've got faculty here who are on that commission. In fact, they're going to be meeting shortly this afternoon, one of their meetings, to prepare for this event. And their job is to be able to convince the deans and the provosts and the presidents, this is where we have to go if we're going to be relevant, if we're going to be instruments for helping create men and women with meaning and purpose, clear meaning and purpose to their lives, who are going to make this a better planet, a better place to live. So again, I think, and with this, and I'll ask you any questions. This place has got so much going for these, not just contributing nationally, but also contributing on the international scale, international set. So I'm really hoping that we can keep this going, and that the kind of rich panels that we heard from here, we can think about doing those things on a national and an international scale as well. So I thank you for all that you've done and do, and I congratulate you on the tremendous progress that you've made in helping us understand a little bit more what our Jesuit University responsibility is to these communities that we live in and this world that we live in. So thank you. Chris said we have some time. Are there any questions? Anybody want to ask anything? Yes, there's two here. Yeah, thank you. There are several others. One of them is on how can Jesuit universities work more closely with those who are incarcerated or come into trouble with the justice system. So teaching, bringing education into prisons, helping people who have done their time, and helping people avoid going into prison. So that whole area, not just juvenile justice, but adult justice for the incarcerated, and especially education for that group. That's another group. There's another group that is studying the Ignatian pedagogical paradigm that we think is more than in just engaged learning. And I think we saw some real examples of the Ignatian pedagogical paradigm. As you know, the paradigm says, we take time to study reality, examine reality, reflect on reality. Then we need to do something with that reality. We need to react. We need to engage it in some way. Then we need to go back and reflect. What did we see? Was what we learned by engaging this reality, was it what we thought? Was it what we had studied originally? And then last, what can we do to change the circumstances that need to be changed if they need to be changed? So that paradigm is more than just engaged learning, because engaged learning often stops with getting you out of the classroom and going into the community. But the paradigm that we're talking about brings you back and asks you, what is your responsibility now that you know something? You may know that things need to be studied more deeply. You may know that things need to be changed. So that's another group. I'm blanking on one or two more. There's a couple more. Yes. Do you know? Oh yes, great, thank you. Yeah, we need to look at. In fact, your conference started with looking at the Indigenous community issue. What do we owe those who helped, those who were here before us, and those who helped build this country? The African American, especially former slave issue, and what justice demands of us for the Indigenous communities. This is new for most of us, and it's very new for our country. For lots of people, many people are struggling with that question of what do we owe to indigenous communities and also to formerly enslaved peoples. And I think we need more, not just knowledge, but then we need to move to healing. And the Jesuit thing has moved from, our idea of what we need to do is move from the faith that does justice to the faith that does justice and reconciliation. Because how then, we know we need to address the justice issue, but then how do we learn to live together again? Or live together with a hope-filled future. So there's the group on this group is, in fact, it's been difficult because we've been having difficult time finding scholars who know faculty who are really deep into the whole indigenous community. And we have had nominations. In fact, there's been several nominated from this university, and we're still looking for some from other parts of the country where they just have not been as aware of this issue as you have been here, especially Georgetown and the East Coast on the slavery issue, and then the West Coast on indigenous peoples issue. I'm just much more aware. Middle of the country is not as aware, believe me. Yeah. What else did I forget? Yeah. Pardon? Yeah, well, all of it is about youth. All of it, that's going to be our theme. The universal apostolic preference of the Jesuits is to accompany youth to a hope-filled future. This last one is about the issue of mental health today. Everybody knows there's been just a rash of many more serious mental health issues that students face. COVID certainly is responsible, I think, for some of it. But you know, I think more than COVID, which did a lot of damage for some young people who were just at that age ready to get out and spread their wings, but then had to stay home for 2 years. I think what is really more damaging has been the kind of overlay in our society of feeling that problems can't be solved, that the future doesn't look so bright. We can't seem to get our democracy to work. All these, by the way, are so related, aren't they? And I think that heavy cloud that hangs over us for a lot of young people who are wondering, what is my future look like? It's been just really tough, really difficult. And then our civil discourse has been so damaged over the last 4 or 5 years, that they hesitate to show who they are. They hesitate to reveal themselves. They hesitate to talk up in class and take a stand or just experiment with an idea, whatever, that they feel very insecure about that. So we have a mental and spiritual health of young people task force. Thanks for reminding me of that. Anything else?
One more. We have like 3 more minutes. So one more question.
Thank you for your leadership and also for calling out Santa Clara University for the terrific work that they're doing on community-based research in environmental justice. You made a statement that I wrote down because it was a good one. Making environmental justice a signature element in every one of our Jesuit universities. And so, a dream of mine that I hold with a lot of people here in this room is having environmental justice or environmental issues in the core curriculum of every university. And I'm just wondering what your thinking is about how the core curriculum could be revised in our Jesuit universities. It's currently kind of literacy in all the different disciplinary areas, theology, philosophy, science, social science, arts. But maybe some of these topics that you're assigning to the commissions in the AJCU could be, the core curriculum could be the vehicle where we kind of introduce these changes to our universities.
Yeah, thank you. I think that Nancy, there are several places that have begun discussions about the core. Several places have just completed a revision of the core. And the two that I know of, fairly flexible. You know, they're based on questions, the big questions in life as themes, and they allow for changes so that the core doesn't become too rigid. And then every 20 years, you need to sit down and revise the core, argue about how much philosophy, how much theology, and so on. But to build a core around questions means that the college's arts and science and social science departments can contribute in various ways, not simply lock into a number of hours that's required in your department. So I think there's going to be more. I think there're going to be more because I think we're at an inflection point in not just in the world, not just in this country, but there seems to be something we're like we've entered. Maybe it's a post-COVID realization. We've entered a new era where at one point we're more delicate, democracies are more fragile, people are less secure about the future. So how do you prepare leaders? Because Jesuit programs, no matter where they are really about getting really talented people, no matter what their background is, getting and helping them become leaders and giving them the tools to become leaders. So really challenging them and forcing them to think broadly, not narrowly. So we don't have universities where you enter and you can pick your major and you can just study literature, law, whatever, business only. We don't have those kind of universities because that's not at all part of the Jesuit ethos and philosophy. So the core needs to be massaged. I like the idea of questions. It opens up, the necessity of literature, the necessity of history, the necessity of looking at something theologically, spiritually, and so on. And then we can fight from there. But yeah, I think this kind of meeting that we're talking about next summer, where these task forces are going to report, that the idea is to get more dialogue, or at least to prepare the leadership of our 28 places to hear what faculty and students are saying. Because I think we don't need to rush into this, but we do need to take our time and listen. And I think if we listen to young people, they're going to say, how is this knowledge integrated? How do I develop a moral compass? Because the questions we're looking at today that are ethical, there's going to be more that we haven't even thought of because of where artificial intelligence is going, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's about opening up the leadership, the listening, so that they can discern over time with the faculty, where does this go? Because there'll be a cacophony of voices, lots of territorial angst, how do I hold on to what we've got? But I think the discussion could be richer if we just did a little more listening to young, especially to young people who are telling us, this has got to be relevant for me to put in all this time and energy. And I'm hoping to come out of this program here, this school, with enthusiasm for the future. Thanks.